Once again, good afternoon. I am Dr. Betty May. I am the Program Director for Graduate Student Success from the Office of Graduate Education and Life. We're happy to have you here this afternoon. We're excited about this workshop. So many of you are interested, and I will turn the time over to our speaker very soon. In the meantime, I just want to share a few announcements. You're going to see these in on my screen. Now, can you see my screen? Leanne, give me a thumbs up or something. Yeah, good, thank you. So this summer, we're still working hard to provide you professional development workshops. And as you might have received information already, let me see if I could get to the next slide. Yeah, I need to do that. Okay, here we go. Okay, so today right here, this workshop is how to stand out in a non-academic job search. And we have a speaker, Ms. Leanne Chan, with us, and I'll introduce her in a little bit. Next Thursday, June 17th at 11 a.m. is going to be about an hour-long workshop. Dr. Christina Fattori is going to speak on imposter syndrome, which so many of us experience in graduate school. So this is a perfect topic for graduate students. So if you have not signed up, please go on to our website on the events page to sign up. In July, I'm going to move to Leanne here. In July, although you have not received information, but I want to give you a heads up. In July, we have planned 2 other workshops, and you will receive information through our July update and also on the events page. In the next couple of weeks, registration links will be up. And so again, one will be at 4 o'clock at this time. The other one on June 27th will be at noontime. And we hope that you will be able to join us then as well. So today, I won't take up any more time, but I will introduce you to Ms. Leanne Chan, who is the Campus Recruiting Manager at Agilent Technologies, a global organization that's a leader in life sciences, diagnostics, and applied chemical markets. She recruits for intern and graduate level talent from Bachelor to Ph.D. level students. Previously, Ms. Chan has recruited at PricewaterhouseCoopers, Sun Life Financial, Liberty Mutual, and the CIA for all career fields. She enjoys bringing fresh talent to organizations and also works as a career coach, helping young to senior professionals find their dream job. Leanne is from New York City and currently resides in New Jersey. She's actually joining us today from New Jersey. And before I turn the time over to her, I just want to mention that at the end of the workshop, we have an evaluation form for you to fill out. We would appreciate your help in doing that, in completing the form so that we know how to improve our professional development workshops or what else to add to the list. And so I'm going to stop share. And Leanne, I think you can share now.
Mm-hmm. Great. Can you all see my screen right now?
Yes. Leanne, may I just interrupt? Students, if you have questions, please type it in the chat. You can type it to me, and then I will read it to Ms. Chan. Yeah, Leanne, go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. So thank you so much for the introduction. And I'm so excited to be here today to speak with you all. So my background is in campus recruiting, but I also do career coaching as a side business of mine. And so today we have a lot to go through, so I'll get through as fast as I can. And I know I do tend to talk a little bit faster. So if anything, just let me know, tell me to slow down. But we're here today to really focus on how to stand out as a top candidate in the job searching process. So without further ado, I'm just going to go straight into it. All right. And this is, again, just a little bit about my background, but also I do have an Instagram. So if you do want to follow me there for more tips on career coaching, et cetera, on job searching process, you can find me there. All right. So today, we are going to highlight what are the most impactful steps that you could take to maximize your job searching results. Now, when we think of the whole job searching process, it is a very long one. So we have the documents that we have to prepare, your resumes, and then how to build relationships, and then how do you land your interviews and negotiate your salary. So what I'm doing today is, because we only have an hour or less, I'm taking the top and most important parts of each aspect of those and highlighting those, because I think if you focus and make improvements on those, you will see some good changes in the results that you're looking for. All right. And I will add that prior to this, I know Dr. Betty may also sent me some questions. So thank you all for submitting questions, because that really helps me tailor this presentation for you. And I'm pretty sure I will be covering most of the questions you guys have asked. All right, so the first thing is, why is it essential to build a strong foundation on your brand, and how is it essential to the job searching process? So we'll talk about that in a bit. The second thing we want to talk about is why who you know and how you manage those relationships will get you in the door. So that's really for getting into the company itself. And then the third thing is how being memorable and indispensable can lead to stronger results. So I do want to, just before I go a little bit further, I know when I'm sharing my screen, I might not see the time here. So Dr. Betty, if you can let me know when maybe it's 5 minutes or so, then I
Sure.
can try to wrap up, or even 10 minutes before, that would be
Right.
great.
Okay.
Awesome. So I'll have my time here too. So when we think about, again, the whole process, it goes 3 steps. Sorry, we're going to create valuable content. And this is about working on your resume, your cover letter, your LinkedIn, anything that's related to your branding itself. And then once you have those strong pieces, the foundation done, then we're going to see, okay, how are you going to reach out to the right individuals to get you the contacts for that company, and also reach out to them to ask more questions. Then once you have those relationships, which will hopefully lead to some phone screens, some interviews, then we talk about, okay, what are the most important things you want to think about when you're trying to negotiate a salary. Okay. All right. So without further ado, let's dive into resumes. We have a lot of questions on that. So when you think of resumes, how do you want to stand out when there's so many other candidates that are vying for, the same spot? And I can tell you, as a recruiter, we get, for one role, we probably get hundreds or even thousands of resumes. So how do you, stand out, and how do you tailor your resume, right? The next thing is, how do you emphasize your strengths and skills? So we'll talk about that in a bit. And then also, how do you find the jobs regardless of whether you have experience or not? Okay, great. So for your resume, so a lot of people I know, especially from the non-academic side, you have your resume and then you have your CV. And the biggest difference is when you're applying for industry, the resume is what they're looking for, because the resume is typically a one-pager where it summarizes all your relevant experiences and also any skill sets that you have pertaining to that. And a CV goes into more detailed of your academic background, maybe some publications that you've had. So my focus is completely going to be on resume for today. And also, because I have some slides here that will touch upon bullet points, I might go a little bit out of order, but just bear with me. I want to make sure I cover everything with the time that we have. So the first thing when we think about a resume is, as I mentioned, we typically have it for one page. And the unspoken rule is that if you have 10 years or less of working experience, your resume should be one page. So I have a little bit over 10 years or even 13 years of experience, and my resume is still one page. So if I can do it, you can definitely do it. All right. The other thing is, with your resume, on the top of your resume, you want to make sure that you have a summary or a profile for that. And I'll show you some examples in a bit. But the reason why you want to, first of all, make sure that you have your summary is to let the recruiter and the employer know that, for instance, if you're applying for an R&D scientist role, that your summary and profile is catered to that particular title. And how we're going to do that is looking at the job description of a particular position. But before I get into that, I want to give you examples of summaries. So feel free to take a screenshot of this if you'd like. But what I have here are some examples that you typically put at the top. And you can actually list it on your resume as summary, or you could put profile. But what you see here, for instance, in the first one is that this role talks about, okay, what it is that they're doing, a communications strategist, and then also the years of experience that they have, 7 years of experience at consumer startups, agency, etc. And then also talking about their soft skills, a team player. So it highlights who they are as a person and what they're looking for. So it's a nice summary of their experience. The second example you see here, it's more of an elevator pitch. So you're really, if you had, let's say, 30 seconds to talk to someone that you just met in an elevator, maybe the boss of a company, how would you sell yourself, right? So you want to focus on your accomplishments. And this is exactly what this example here is talking about. So software account manager, increased sales, helped Fortune 500 companies, and identifying customer needs, etc. So you want to hone in on those accomplishments, and it's only within a few lines here. Now, if you're looking for space within that one page on your resume, you can also put in the bottom here a very brief description or a summary of maybe one of your major accomplishments, and then also a little bit about your skill sets, like what it is that you do. So these are examples. Again, if you want to go ahead and take a screenshot of it, but hopefully it gives you an idea that you should have it. In the past, on resumes, some people call these objectives, but that's kind of like a older way of saying it, or a previous way of saying it. Now we're moving towards summary or profile. Right? Okay. So in regards to job descriptions, what I mentioned earlier is you want to tailor your resume for each application, each role that you're applying to. So let's say for one company, you're applying for an R&D scientist, or let's say an engineering role. You should have one resume for each of those roles, so 2 resumes in total. And what you're going to do is for each one, you want to look at the job description, what their responsibilities are, and then from your end, for example, if the job responsibilities, the first one that they say is, working closely with different stakeholders, different customers. So on your resume, you want to match that by listing an accomplishment that is related to relationships. How are you serving customers in the past? So you want to match that. And in order to find the job descriptions, I've listed here the top job searching sites that I think are really great for finding opportunities. So LinkedIn is a huge one. And then Indeed.com, you have Glassdoor.com, and then you can Google for jobs. And so when you go on Google, you just click on, type in R&D scientist, and then that will pop up a list of different opportunities there. Right. Okay, so I talked about accomplishments versus responsibilities. So, but I'll go a little bit deeper. When we think about resumes, I see this a lot on the resumes that I see, is that there are many candidates that list out what they've done in each role, and it's kind of sort of repeating what the job description says, but not listing out what were the results of it, what were the impact, what value did you add to that particular role. So think about, what it is your accomplishments are, and that's what you should be writing on your resume. Not so much, I interacted with this customer. Okay, well, that's great. What did that lead to? Did it lead to more results, increase in sales, etc.? That's what we want to look for, and that is what's going to make you stand out. Okay. The next thing I have here is the type of resume and the formatting of the resume. So that does matter a lot. I did get a few questions from students about career changers. So this is, you want to pay attention to this for sure. So what I have here are examples. So as I'm going through these examples, I'm going to explain to you what it is and why it's important. So the chronological format is what a lot of candidates use, because it's basically going from your most current job or work experience to back in time. So that's how the formatting is. And then you'll have your skill sets also typically on the top. So you'll see here, this is the top half of the page, because I have only so much space on the PowerPoint slide. And my next slide, I'll show you the bottom part of it. But here you'll see, okay, the name and then the experience on the left-hand side and the skill sets. And I'll show you this bottom part of it. So this here is what we call a chronological format. And it's very common for a lot of students to use this, and even for graduate students as well. the next one, so this is the whole thing. So it's a little bit smaller in the font, but I just want to show you the whole resume. Okay. The functional format, I don't know if everyone here might know what it is, but it's also known as a skills-based format. And this here, what it is the meatiest part of it is the detailed summary of your areas of expertise. So instead of talking about, okay, what current position you're in, you're going to focus on over here, customer service, meeting coordination, admin support. So in this case, let's say the job description says, again, looking at relationships, looking at organizational skills. That's where you want to list out maybe 3 areas of expertise and what your experiences are, as you can see here. And then what happens at the bottom is that you would list very briefly, okay, this is your title of the jobs that you've been at, the companies, the dates, etc. So it's very brief. You don't go into like details or accomplishments here. Okay, right. And that's the whole picture of it. All right. So the last one is a combination or a hybrid format. And this is actually very good for career changers because when you have this combination format, it actually makes it easier for the recruiter and employer because when they're looking at your resume here, they can see, okay, John Smith might not have certain years of experience in XYZ, but look at all the relevant skills that they have. So what a combination resume does is it basically takes the functional and the chronological resume and combines that together. So typically it's a middle ground of those two. And you'll see here where there are relevant skills. And that is typically near the top of the page, kind of like the functional one where we're talking about areas of expertise. And then at the bottom is where you talk about your work experience. But you see here that it does list the title and the company, but it also includes additional information on what you've done in those particular roles. So this is what we call, again, a combination, a hybrid resume, right? Okay. Again, this is the full picture of it. All right. Okay, so we talked about the type, the format, the number of pages. I mentioned that already. So if you do have any publications, what I would do on a job application is you have your resume, and then you have a separate document for those publications. So that way, the recruiters, they can look at it and they'll pull out whatever is relevant. So you can do it that way. 2 things on the bottom, typos and grammatical errors. Please have someone, maybe a friend or 2, look over your resume because I do see a lot of typos and grammatical errors. Some recruiters, some employers are forgiving, some are not, and you really don't want that to ruin any chances of you working at your dream company, right? Okay, and utilize your career services at your university. And then the last thing is a lot of you might be using Word document. So make sure you save it as a PDF because what happens is no matter what tool we're using, if we're viewing it, sometimes if it's not in PDF, it comes out all funky looking. And for all the hard work you do, making sure the format looks great, it can just go crazy. So if you save it in PDF, it comes out exactly how you want it to look like. And it's easier for us to see as well. Okay, so I think we're so far good on time. Okay, cover letters. So cover letters, a lot of people ask that question, do we really need it, right? So the cover letters, just to share with you, it's basically explaining your value proposition. So what kind of impact you have. And the way I see it is, on your resume, you might highlight, a couple of accomplishments. In your cover letter, that's where you want to emphasize those accomplishments. Go into a little bit more detail about what you've done in that particular role. So I would say from a recruiting perspective, a cover letter can make or break your chances. So I've been in situations where we've had literally 2 candidates that the hiring managers were going back and forth, like, okay, should we consider this one or another one? And one of them actually had a cover letter that gave us more information, and we did go with that candidate. So you never know, but I would say you should have at least one cover letter for each type of role that you're applying to. All right. Now, I'm going to probably touch upon cover letters a little bit, not too long on it. But for the core elements of a cover letter, you want to make sure that you have an appropriate greeting. A lot of people tend to start off with "to whom it may concern," and that should be totally cut out. Because nowadays what you want is, with the internet, you can find information on who is hiring. So you can say, dear recruiter, or if when you look at a job description, sometimes they might say this particular role will report into the head of data analytics, right? So if you actually go on LinkedIn and search for head of data analytics at that company's name, you might be able to find out who the hiring manager is. So that's one way to look for it. And then the other greetings are here. So you can take a brief look at this, name a recruiter, but I know this session is also being recorded. So don't feel like you have to write this down. You could probably get it afterwards as well, or take a screenshot of this real quick. Okay. All right. The second thing is, when you start off the cover letter, you want to really have an engaging opening line. And I have some examples here. Again, I'm not going to read through every one of these, but just highlight a few. So the first one, talks about how you found this opening and how it has an impact in you for a longer time. But what I also like is the second example here. If you were referred by someone, then you can definitely, and you should, leverage that relationship and say, I spoke with, I don't know, Peter Pan, made it up, who, he's a project manager, and he was one who informed me about your opening. Right then and there, as the recruiter or employer, I'm like, okay, where's Peter Pan? I've got to find him. Let me reach out to him. And referrals, typically you do get a phone screen, which is the first round of the interviewing process. Okay, the third one here, oopsies. All right, third one here is talking about how you've done your research. So you've looked actually into Fortune magazine, you read about the company and their latest tools, and that's why you're inspired to work with them, or one of the reasons. So it lets us know as the employer that, okay, this candidate is really interesting or interested in our company, and they've done the research to show that. So again, feel free to take a screenshot. I'm going to go to the next slide now. All right. So the last two things is a clear pitch and a great closing line. And kind of what I mentioned before, the job description is gold for you. So on the left side here, I have a sample of responsibilities and requirements. So what you typically see when you look at job descriptions. And then the example here on the right is how you would start it off. So, dear so-and-so, and then talk about your first paragraph. This is the one that I just mentioned before. And then you see here where it says, I currently serve as a paralegal and implemented a new calendar system. So here they're talking further about the accomplishments itself. And then also in this fourth or third paragraph here, it says, I received praise for my positive attitude, overall support, another accomplishment, another reward, and then following it up with a closing. So I'd love the opportunity to discuss how to contribute to your team. So the cover letter, I should add, is it should only be one page as well. So definitely no more than a page. Keep it brief, 3 to 4 paragraphs max, and then you sign off on it, sincerely, etc. Okay. All right. Okay, so the last branding document or information I want to talk about is LinkedIn. So I am a huge fan of LinkedIn. I think everyone should be on it, for no matter what industry you're in or you want to go into. So let's dive into it. So LinkedIn itself, just for those, I'm not sure if some of you are on it or some of you might not be on it, but it is a great tool for recruiters and employers to find candidates. So they're actually active on LinkedIn every single day, looking through keywords, looking to see who is in pharmaceuticals or who is getting their master's or Ph.D. in molecular biology, et cetera. So it is so important that you have your LinkedIn. If you can just start even today from scratch, create a free account and make sure you have a photo or headline. Just start off with that, right? So one thing to be sure of, when you have your photo, you want to make sure that it's a headshot, and then it's also with good lighting, and that it looks professional. So I would think maybe kind of like your graduation picture, but less formal, without the cap, etc. but definitely make sure that you have a photo of you on it, because it does kind of go along with credibility and trust. Because if we look at a LinkedIn profile and we see that, okay, there's no photo, we don't know if it's a real account or not, if we should be reaching out to that person. And that's from a recruiting perspective. So make sure you have that. The next thing you want to have is a headline. And I'm going to show you some examples right here. So headlines are typically, you'll see them right underneath the pictures of people's LinkedIn profile. And these are just some examples. Basically, it's 1 or 2 lines, because you only have a certain amount of space and a character, I believe, to put that information. So the first one I have here, you could say you're a recent graduate, or you are, working on your MS, etc. And then that's one example. The second example talks about, okay, what roles they've been in and how many years of experience, but you see 3 years experiencing managing 6-figure ad budgets. So it shows us that, okay, wow, this person was given a lot of responsibilities, most likely because they earned it. And then at the bottom, the last one, it says, I help pharmaceutical companies recruit for talent. So that's just saying what you do again. So feel free to take another screenshot of this, but these are some examples. Okay. All right. The next thing on LinkedIn that I think is very crucial is having a summary. So basically, when you think of LinkedIn, so a lot of people ask me, what's the difference between a resume and your LinkedIn profile? A resume is typically more formal. So you write it in really, you start off the bullet points with an action verb, like what you've accomplished. But LinkedIn is more, I would say, personal and professional at the same time. So you are telling your story, and they do recommend that you use it in first person. So you can say, I've accomplished XYZ, or I have made a difference in this organization by doing this. So it's not so rigid in format. It's not like, oh, I accomplished XYZ. So the summary here is, it's right underneath your headline, and you can be as creative as you want with it, but I'm going to share with you 2 examples here. And hopefully you can all see this part of the screen. Okay, so this is one example where this particular individual starts off telling his story of how he even got interested in software development, and he talked about his middle and high school experience and how it led to him, pursuing his education further at Purdue. So, and then you'll see at the bottom where he talks about some specialties and what he's taken in his courses. So this is a very good example where you talk about, what your personal story, and then what you're doing now and where you want to go. Okay. This here is another example. So this individual actually lists out her, she has it listed out numerically, but the first paragraph or first example, she does emphasize on her career, what she's worked in and who she's worked with. And then she gets into a little bit of, personal stories here. So this is another example. It's really, talking about yourself, but listing out your skill sets and what your passion are. So I would encourage you to go on LinkedIn. If you have certain job titles that you're interested in, right? Type in, R&D scientist. I'm using that example for this workshop. R&D scientist, and then you'll see, I'm sure, a lot of names that pop up. Browse, click through different resumes. Most people have it public, so you can see what they have on their summary, just to get some ideas and see what works for you and what might not work for you. Okay. All right. So the last few things I'll talk about, I'm just going to highlight verbally to you, but experiences, as I mentioned, it doesn't have to be as rigid or formal as it is in resumes. So experiences, you can actually attach any projects or any portfolios, any research or publication you've done. You can attach it on LinkedIn, whereas on your resume, you can't really do that. So that's one thing I love about LinkedIn on experiences. And then make sure you do put your education. You don't have to put the year, but you can put, what you're pursuing or what you graduated with, et cetera, just so the recruiters and employers know what your background is. The other thing to highlight is keywords. So that's exactly what recruiters and employers look for when they're typing in keywords, like, for instance, software engineering, recent graduate, et cetera. we have a tool that's called LinkedIn Recruiter that actually hones in on, okay, who are the relevant candidates for this position, and maybe based on location, et cetera. So make sure you can put any relevant keywords, and you can find those keywords again in the job descriptions. So any roles that you're interested in, look in the job descriptions. Let's say they asked for Microsoft Office experience. So you want to make sure you have those skill sets on your resume and LinkedIn so that it shows up with that information. Okay. And then the last thing, I believe it's the last thing, is having the open to work sign on there. So this here is a screenshot of how you go about in putting it out. So open to work lets recruiters and employers know that you are open to opportunities. So for you to have that out there, it makes it a lot easier for us to find you. So if you actually don't have, open to work, it might not boost you up. When we're looking at candidates, you might be on the maybe, I don't know, maybe page 40 of our results versus page 1. So definitely include this in here if you're looking for opportunities. Right? Okay. So now that we focus on the branding piece, and good with time, so we're going to talk about relationships, and this is really focusing on networking and how to get yourself your foot in the door. Right. So in terms of sources of network, we want to focus on the first thing, the easiest thing is the people that you already know. So looking around you, your university, your friends, your classmates, professors, career services, and even alumni. So a lot of people, that's sometimes it's not the first thing that they think of when they're thinking of university network, but your alumni is key, and especially when it comes to LinkedIn, and I'll talk about it shortly. But for an employer, for a recruiter, especially for me, I work in campus recruiting, career services is my first point of contact. So any job openings that I have, I'm letting them know, hey, help market this out to your students, right? So definitely utilize any tools that they have there. And then professors is the second point of contact for us. So if we're looking for someone in biology and chemistry, I'm going to email those faculty, those professor, and say, hey, can you share this with your students? And professors love that. So that's the other point of contact that I reach out to. And then the other one that's not listed on here is if you're part of any student organizations, especially the academic ones, let's say Society Women Engineers, for instance, we actually will reach out to those president of those student leader organizations to say, here's our opening as well. So, so that's that. For alumni, you can also do a search. Pretty much every university has an alumni group on LinkedIn. So please make sure you join that, because when we think of connecting people, like when people come to me and ask like, hey, I'd love to learn more about XYZ or about opportunities, and I see that they graduated from my alma mater, then I'm probably like, okay, great, let's chat. So they're more willing to help out, I think. So definitely tap into your alumni pool. And then obviously your personal network, family and friends, let them know you're very open to opportunities and what you're looking for. And then also, if you've had any previous internship experience or volunteering experience, those are great point of contacts too, to reach out. Yeah, so yes, so these are the ones to focus on. And I had one thought that I wanted to say, it's slipping my mind, but if I remember it, I'll make sure to come back to it. All right. Okay, now what I want to talk about next is sources of network that you don't know. So how do you even get in touch with them, right? So there's a few different ways you can do this. The first one is through LinkedIn. That's, again, it's not like I work for them, but with LinkedIn, you can really search for people by their title, by the company that they work at. So if you wanted to work at Boston Scientific, you can look up recruiter, Boston Scientific, and you'll get maybe a whole list of recruiters there. They seem to have a pretty big group. It's a big company, and you can get an idea of who the recruiters are. And when you click on their profile, they might say, okay, I'm a recruiter at Boston Scientific. I recruit for these particular roles. So some recruiters are only they're recruiting for certain types of roles depending on how their company is based. The other thing is hiring managers. So as I mentioned before, when you see a job description, sometimes they will say, this position reports into this particular department. Again, looking into, I'll go back, R&D scientists, maybe say at Boston Scientific, and look into managers. So that's another way to look into it. So I think you get the whole point of LinkedIn. The other thing is, I don't have it listed here. So is when in LinkedIn, there are many different groups. So we talked about alumni group, but there's also industry groups. And so you can join biotech in San Francisco, for instance, or, excuse me, you can look into specific, maybe computer engineering within Google, et cetera. So do a little, just try it out, searching on LinkedIn, see what you come up with. And when you find those groups, look for the ones that are more active. Let's say they have more members in it. I would say anything 1,000 or more members, join those, but also see how active they are. Right. So when you join those groups and when you follow, you can also follow companies on LinkedIn. Don't just follow and join the group, because that is not going to help with anything. What you need to do is also engage with the folks in the group or do a posting, etc. So make sure, even if it's on your own profile, let's say if you read an article today that talked about, let's see, the impact of, I don't know, COVID vaccines. I'm trying to think of something right now, but basically you want to, if you read something that is of interest for your particular career path or field, and you want to share it with your network, post it on your profile. You can share it as an article. You don't have to write your own content if you don't want to. But when you share an article, your network sees it and they might like it or comment and say, oh, this is a wonderful article. Thanks for sharing. Their network sees it. And so the more exposure you get, the more people that will want to connect with you and see you as an expert in this field. So make sure you do that. And if you're, let's say, in a LinkedIn alumni group, right, and someone posts an article or makes or types their own blog post in there, you can comment as well. That's another way to get more engagement. So I don't mean comment as in great article, that's it, right? You want to say, you want to be able to add value again. So adding value to that article, saying, I read about this and here's further research that I found from XYZ magazine. So whenever you can, add comments where you can make an impact, all right? Not just for the sake of commenting or liking, right? Okay. All right. So the third thing we're going to talk about is how to be memorable and indispensable and how that could lead to stronger results. So interviewing is the biggest piece here. So interviewing is extremely, extremely crucial. I know I've had a lot of questions on that. So let me go ahead and get started. So with interviewing, first impressions do count a lot. And what I have here are the different types of interviewings that will happen. So a lot of it is phone right now and also video. I don't know if a lot of companies are doing in person yet. Maybe a couple of months down, we'll see. But in terms of phone and video, what I want to emphasize is you really need to practice. So practice makes perfect. And I'm sure career services or even if you have your friends helping you out, I encourage you to do a lot of mock interviews. And the reason for that is when you get to, let's say, a video interview or even phone, sometimes you do clam up. And this happened to me like very many years ago when I first started interviewing as well. So to start off with phone interviews, obviously the good thing about phone interviews is you can't see the person face to face. So they can't see you sweating or being nervous, and they can't see, how many, if you have your laptop open, your papers, your index cards, everywhere, they can't see that, right? But for phone interviews, what I've found is that when you stand up, just how right now I'm standing, I don't know if you could tell, it makes a huge difference on your energy and your voice. And something about it, test it out next time, test it out when you're doing a phone interview. Something about it, it just, because from the receiving end as a recruiter, we can sense that energy. And it's not about being, an introvert or extrovert. It's not about that, but it just brings more, enthusiasm. Well, it sounds like candidates are, very passionate or interested in their role. So focus on your energy for the phone interview and make sure you definitely do have a quiet background as much as possible. Because I can tell you from personal experience, years ago when I was starting the interviewing process, I was so excited about this opportunity. And I was at a friend's house, just happened to be during my vacation time. And I told her entire family, get all the phone lines, back in the days, they didn't have, not everyone has cell phones. I unplugged all the phone lines. And then I was in one room only to realize during my interview, there was a phone in that bedroom. So it threw me off. I was caught off guard, but make sure, and you know what, if that happens now, it's life, right? You can just say, okay, my apologies, I'm just, can you give me a minute just to shut it off? And that's totally fine. But if you think, sometimes when things happen, it catches you off guard, right? It could be any example. So just make sure you have a quiet background. If there is construction going on for whatever reason, just let the recruiter know and say, hey, there's construction going on, unfortunately, but I wanted to let you know, should we still continue or should we reschedule, right? So, all right, we've talked enough about that. Video interviews are very similar in that you do want as quiet of a background, background here, no distractions, and good lighting as well. The sun is probably setting here, so you can't see the lighting well, but I would say make sure everything's connected. Log on 5-10 minutes earlier if you can for any of the video interviews, and because typically they should give you some buffer time to prepare. And then in person, you want to make sure you have all the documents, that you arrive at least 15-20 minutes earlier. So those are the first impressions thing to work on. The second thing is the types of questions that you could anticipate during an interview. So I am going to, this here are the common interviewing questions at the very beginning. So typically phone screen, when the recruiter asks, why do you want to work here? Tell me about yourself. And I can't tell you how many times during the phone screen, because that's what I do as recruiter, I do the first round of interviews. Whenever I ask students, why do you want to work at this company? They cannot give me a great answer for most of them. And it really, it's frustrating at the same time, because it's, all the information that you can find about a company is out there. And we know when you don't do your research, when you can't even look on our website to see what our mission and our vision is, and maybe even looking into financial reports or reading some articles on our latest press release, that to me is, I will say, it seems like it's a lazy candidate. If you're not vested in the interview, how would I know in the future how you will perform, right? So that to me says a lot. So please make sure you research the company on LinkedIn, on their website, even on Glassdoor, whatever it is, do some research. You don't have to do super extensive, but know your reason for why you want to be there. Maybe certain products or services that they have that you can relate to, right? For instance, I used to work at Sun Life Financial. It's a financial services and insurance industry. So some candidates will say, one of my, when I was a kid, we didn't have the right insurance, and that affected us in XYZ ways. So I could see why, now they want to be able, why they're interested, in working at our company. So tying that together. The other question you will get is, strengths and weaknesses, what's your greatest achievement? And then tell me about a time when you made a mistake. So this here is really asking about what did you learn from your past experiences. So the one thing I also want to emphasize with interviews overall is we all have our success stories and our stories of challenges, where we struggled with things. And during the interviewing process, yes, you do want to tell your story, but you want to focus on how you turn things around, you want to focus on the positives, right? Okay, I made a mistake with this particular project, but this is what I did to overcome that or to solve it. Maybe you had to work in extra hours, or you had to work, I don't know, a week longer, etc. Whatever it is, you learn from that. So focus on the positive and, end on a positive note for all of your interviewing questions. Okay. All right. A few insider perspectives from recruiters, from me. So when you think of openings and recruiters, when we reach out to you, we really, really want to hire you. So we see you and we see you on paper and we're so excited about having you, like talking to you, that we really want it to work. So please do your research, please prepare for your interviews and do the best that you can, but just know that we're rooting for you because we want to be able to get you to our company as soon as possible. Okay. The next thing is paper versus person. So I have seen many times where on resumes, someone looks really, really good. And when we interview them, it was the complete opposite. So they weren't able to sell themselves. Again, I don't know if it's a lack of preparation or whatnot, or it could be nervousness, right? But I can tell you, I've interviewed folks where I could tell they're nervous. You couldn't hear it, but they still did great, because sometimes you just don't know, but that doesn't really affect, even if you're nervous, that's fine. Focus on the content, because you're really trying to sell yourself, right? And then the last thing is, if you've done everything, that you possibly can, and you don't get an offer, it's not your fault, okay? I can say there's so many factors for why candidates don't get a job. And sometimes, and some people view it as a good, some people view it as a bad. They might have hired someone internally. And if the good side of it, okay, that company is promoting internally. The bad side of it is, darn it, I didn't get that job because they hired that internal person, right? So you don't know. And sometimes, recruiters and employers don't tell you why, because some might give you feedback. So some will, but some don't, because there are also the chance that, employers, if they say certain things, or maybe, it could get into legal, whatever, lawsuits, etc. But from my experience, I do tend to provide feedback, especially if it's technical feedback. For instance, maybe this person lacked a certain skill using the software, and that's something another candidate had. So certain technical feedback I do give, but I just want you to know that at the end of the day, don't beat yourself up, even if you don't get an offer. If the recruiter calls you or whatever and says you didn't get the offer, I would say thank them for the time, but also ask, can you provide some feedback? So I would just, take it as a learning experience and then move on, right? Because at the end of the day, the right company and the one you're meant to be with will hire you. Okay. 10 more minutes, I know. Negotiation, this is my last part of it, and I'll try to talk fast. Uh, but tips on negotiating is researching, research. So I will have some information on the next slide, but I will list some tools that are great websites for you to check out. For negotiating, the best time to negotiate is after you get a job offer. So you don't want to start negotiating when you get on the first round of interviews with the recruiter. You want them to lead the conversation. And then once you get a job offer at the end of final rounds, that is when you can negotiate then. And then in terms of negotiation, avoid giving a number first. And I'll get into that in a bit. But with a phone screen, again, you could take a snapshot of this here. So when you do the first round of interviews, the phone screen, typically the recruiter will ask you, what are you looking for in terms of compensation? And you can say this verbatim, because kind of going back to before, if you say a number first, it's kind of like you lose, right? And the reason for that is you don't know what they're budgeting for, but you don't want to come off as, I want this number, I want the salary, and if you don't give it to me, then that's it. So you want to come off as being fair, and also it's not just a salary, it's the whole, benefits package that is in place, right? Some companies might have equity as well. So I would avoid saying the number first. So if the recruiter probes, you can say, what is your budget, your company's budget for this role? So that's another way to ask them. All right. Okay, I talked about negotiation after an offer. So when you do get the job offer, there's a few things to keep in mind. When they call you and say, congratulations, we'd like to give you an offer, don't go ahead and say, I accept. Please don't do that. So what you want to say is, thank you so much. I'm very excited for this opportunity. Can I get a few days to think about it? Or when would I need to get back to you on my decision? So you want to just say thank you and hold off, because what you want to do is buy time for you to think about how you want to negotiate. All right. So, I have manners here as the first one. So when it does come time for you to negotiate, with the recruiter, let's say a few days later, you want to talk about, okay, well, first thing, manners, is you want to thank them again. You say, I am so excited about this opportunity. I really enjoy talking to, people, whichever the names are. And then you want to go into, as we mentioned during my interview process, these are the accomplishments I've had at previous roles or publications I've offered. So that's talking about the value and impact. And then once you finish that, then you list out, okay, based on what the offer letter says, my priorities are, and you could say salary, or maybe you want more vacation days. So I would list out what's most important to you, right? Because for some, it's different for everyone. Some people might want more vacation days. Some might want more professional development training in their new role. Some might want to stay remote, whatever it is, list out your top priorities and negotiate, the first few ones and see how it is going back and forth with the recruiter. And most likely, the recruiter, if that's the one you're talking to, they will have to go back to the hiring manager and see if they can say yes or no on this. So when you have the call, and I do recommend you have a call versus emailing the recruiter back with your negotiation. So have a call with them and say, this is what I'm looking for. Let's say I want to make 100K, and they were giving you 80K. So list out 100K and then let them know your value and impact that you bring. And then also, I would say at the end, I understand that you would need to check with the hiring manager. So that's totally fine. What I can do is email you then all the information that you want to share with them. So that's how I would do it in a nutshell. I know I'm going very fast, but again, this is the brief version of things that I typically teach this in like a 3-day course. So I'm really going brief here. All right, so that's what I wanted to share. This here, I just want to say you've got this, because I know, there's a lot that we've covered today and it might seem overwhelming, but take it piece by piece and exactly the way that I'm showing you by the resume, cover letter. Follow that path, because otherwise you're going to overwhelm yourself, or something, you might focus on interviewing when or just applying for jobs when you haven't even tailored your resume. So I don't want you to get out of the process. But if you follow it, you've got this, you will see more results. And then I have the next steps here, a few more minutes, is, if you are interested in connecting with me, I am on LinkedIn. So I think there's only one or maybe two Leanne Chans out there, but this is me. And what I will offer, I am planning a 3-day boot camp where I will go into the job searching process in way more detail, and I'm offering, this is a new thing that I'm doing, so I'm going to test it out. But what I'd like to do is actually go through each step of the journey, but we're going to take time, do some brainstorming and give you obviously a lot more examples than what I've gone through here. This is just a taste of things. But if you are interested in any career coaching as well, just message me, connect with me if you want for any reason. But if you have specific questions, just contact me there. And I know Dr. Betty May also talked about the evaluation. So I'm just putting this here as well towards the end.
Thank
But yes,
you. Thank you.
thank you.
Now, thank you so much. I know it's not very much time for you to cover everything, but I have two questions in chat, so I'm going to read it to you. First question, I'm currently a PhD student, but I worked about 10 years before coming back to school. I also have some leadership relevant experiences from my undergrad. My question is, how much do I include in my resume? Last 10 years, or can I include everything that I've done, relevant experiences? Thank you.
Yeah, great question. So I would say for the position that you're applying to, put the most relevant experiences. So whether it's from your school, leadership, or from your work experiences, put the most relevant ones up there. And on your resume, I know it didn't show on some of the formats, you want to have your LinkedIn profile like hyperlinked to your resume, because on your LinkedIn is where you can list everything on there. So as a recruiter, when I want to learn more, I will look for you on LinkedIn and be like, oh, okay, this person has other experiences as well, in addition to what's relevant. So that's how I would separate those.
Thank you. The second question, when you mentioned a high volume of applications, Let me see. Oh, so let me, okay, I think there's a third one. So here's the second one. When you mention a high volume of applications, hundreds or thousands for a single position, is that typical of what you see for jobs that require a PhD as well?
Mm, not so much. So what I would see for PhDs and master candidates, it could probably be in the hundreds. So it also depends on how long we have it open for. We, at Agilent, for instance, we have positions that are opened even up to 3 months. And that's when, yes, we get probably 200 resumes or so. And oh, by the way, in all the companies that I've worked at, we don't have a, what do you call it? The applicant tracking system. Like, it's not automatic that it filters for keywords. So we actually are looking at every single resume individually, which takes a lot of time. So if you can help us by creating an awesome resume, that really makes our lives a lot easier. But yes, I hope I answered the question.
So the third one is, thank you so much for the great presentation. On
Mhm.
some job application websites, there is an option to just include your LinkedIn profile or to upload a resume as PDF. Which one is more preferable?
So that's a really good question. I would say do both or do all, actually. So depending on how the employer, because as an employer, we pay for those LinkedIn services. When it says to, click in and just click through LinkedIn and I'll apply, it does get through to the employer, but sometimes you want to be safe and make sure that you apply on the company's website. So that will definitely guarantee your resume is in there. Because I know from experience and my previous experiences where a candidate said, I applied on LinkedIn, but we don't get it on our end. So there might have been a glitch or something. So you don't want to risk that. Yeah, definitely apply on the company's website, no matter what.
So could you call the company to find out whether your application had been received?
When you apply on the company's website, you should actually get an email confirmation that says you received it. If not, then that's when I might look into, the LinkedIn search to find the recruiter. And it doesn't matter which recruiter it is. Just let them know, I applied for this position on this day for this role, but I don't know if it went through. And as a recruiter, I get those messages a lot. I will say, let me check with so and so because I can find out who is it. So yes, you can do that. There is typically no phone numbers nowadays. So LinkedIn is the best thing to do.
Okay, all right. I see one more question here, actually two more. Okay, so any thoughts on having a personal website?
Yeah, I mean, definitely include that into your LinkedIn, your resume, as a hyperlink. If it adds to the position that you're applying to, if it adds value to it. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Mhm.
I think this is the final question I see here. As a recent graduate, I won't have years of experience or accomplishments to lean on in negotiations. How to approach? I think she meant, how do I approach these negotiations in the starting phase?
Mhm. Negotiating in the beginning,
Um,
or
as a recent graduate, because she doesn't have a lot of experience,
okay.
to negotiate. So how should they negotiate?
Yeah. So experiences it doesn't have to be from work, right? It could be from whether it's volunteering, whether it's for extracurricular activities, because I've seen so many students where they've led like a dance marathon. They've actually organized the entire marathon. And I know it's a huge responsibility. So, and then they will say, okay, we raised $10,000 from that event, right? So highlight those experiences, because that to me that's soft skills, that's some technical skills, organization, that is important. So it's not just the work experiences.
Thank you. There's one more.
Mm-hmm.
She says she submitted a question in the registration.
Yeah.
How do you get noticed when you do get auto filtered?
Auto filtered.
I guess if your resume is,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. So, that is a good point. So when you're tailoring your resume to the job descriptions, use their words, and that actually made a huge difference when I was applying. So great question. So, for instance, the job description might say working with clients, But if you have working with customer service, that connects you out. So it definitely makes a huge difference if you use their language, use their terms. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay. Very good. I think that's all the questions that I see in chat. And once again, we thank you so much for taking time to speak to our students here at WVU. And students, would you please kindly complete the evaluation? And I'm going to bring up my PowerPoint then because it should still be on there. Okay. Let's see. Yeah. And I see if I could copy and paste this, not in this mode, but so if you would, yeah, take a screenshot here, not a screenshot, but you can, and that should take you to, yeah, if you scan the QR code, it should take you to the website. And we really appreciate all of you being here. All right. So I see some thank you messages in the chat.
Yes.
So if there are no further questions, students, I hope to see you in the next workshop. And feel free to contact me or the office if you have any question or if there's anything that we could help you with during your enrollment here at WVU.